very much, Sandra.
Thank you.
Everyone, you're very welcome to this afternoon's webinar session, and thanks to Sandra. She's giving you an overview of the type of work that we do using behavioral science component along with systems thinking and implementation today to its application to clinical trials and improving the success of clinical trials along with Sinead.
And today I'll be using some of the experiences from the SIMPLE study to help discuss some of the issues around increasing the impact of our clinical trials.
Okay, so for the next short while, there are really three components to today's session. The first is that we're looking very much at clinical trials and improving their success, really abstract conceptual perspective in terms of guiding principles rather than a very detailed hands-on. We're confining our look to some marketing literature and the experience and what that says. That then to apply it to the SIMPLE study, which Sinead was involved in. Finally, then, the kind of third part to the presentation is to say we are coming at this from a social sciences behavioral component. So for many people, many experts who are using their technical professional background in trials, it can take you out of your comfort zone and can raise some questions that are sticky and messy questions. But overall, that's what we're about today. Looking at principles, looking at their application in the SIMPLE style, and looking at social sciences. To start that, we've got some quotes here from the social marketing literature, and you start to find in the social marketing literature that it resonates strongly with what you will also see in the clinical trial literature. A number of issues come up with running a trial over beyond the medical component or beyond the drug component, and that has to do both with the design and with the building and the delivery of the trial itself. Across literature, recruitment and retention is a key issue. It's very hard to find individuals that are both suitable and appropriate to participate in the trial. When you do develop up that profile, it can be very difficult to access those individuals. When you can access participants, it can be hard to get them to buy into participating. And finally, once you've got to that stage in your trial, you can find that relevant, suitable individuals then drop out. So your dropout rate begins to detract from the results. And these issues of recruitment and retention, they go to cost, they go to efficiency and the effectiveness of the trial. We find that depending on the types of trials that you're looking at, the trial itself can give rise to risky behaviors, and managing that then gets difficult. So the primary outcome, did the trial work? In theory, that's a very simple question, but in reality, it's a much more complex question. And trial outcome, which should in theory be black and white, again, in reality, can be very difficult because perhaps it worked, perhaps it didn't, but the why it worked or why it didn't can be difficult to answer.
That have an impact on clinical trials would be, the first is, as exemplified by Sinead et al., is hello, it's English I speak. And a lot of scientists, when they're trying to communicate with people in terms of recruitment and retention of participants to clinical trials, they fail to break down the key messages or what they want patients or participants to do into language that is understandable to these people. And the second is the way that these messages are framed for the for participants, how you try to encourage participants to take part in trials. For example, when and where you're trying to recruit the participants in real life may be different from a more scientific setting.
You find that you're grappling with issues such as literacy levels, media literacy, medical literacy, presentation, trust, risk, and all of these are variables that can interfere and detract from both the trial, from the running of it, and ultimately from the success of it. So there are issues which we cross in social marketing, and social marketing has had to grapple with. For that reason, today we look to the principles of social marketing and how it can help us manage some of the difficulties, some of the variables that decrease the effectiveness of a trial. And again, from a social perspective as opposed to a medical professional perspective. So if we have a look then at social marketing, we can look at what it is and what it isn't. The easiest way to think about social marketing is to think about your everyday life. And if at the weekend just passed, you may have been out doing some Christmas shopping. Perhaps you bought in extra fuel for the weekend or extra food because of all the storm warnings. But marketing itself influences your everyday behavior. It influences what you consume and how you consume it. So think of Coca-Cola, and you have access to Coke. In fact, Coke go as far as to say that they want a Coke vending machine to be within 100 yards of every single individual on the planet. So application very important to them. Packaging, you find particularly this time of year, the packaging changes to reflect the season that's coming upon us, and that catches people's attention, it engages people, so it means they're more aware of the product with a greater chance of purchasing it. You will then use the notion of price, and it can be financial price. It can also be psychological or emotional pricing, and to engage people in purchasing patterns, consumption patterns. So we take that notion of understanding individuals and their needs and wants, of organizing and offering a product or a service to meet those needs, so of exchange, engaging in exchange. We add the word social, we're doing the same thing, we're influencing people's behavior. This influence in social marketing is around health or environmental issues. So we wish people to give up smoking, to quit smoking. We want people to increase their physical activity, do exercises. We look to people to have their children vaccinated. We can use the same concepts of products and services, notion access, engagement, creating awareness to help influence them. So that's what marketing does. It uses the tools and techniques of commercial marketing for social ends. Here as well, we're also concerned with consequences. So also concerned with the larger effects of those behavior on the community, on our policies, regulation and governance structures as well. So we look forward and we get critical about the issues that we're examining and reflective. So consequences are positive for the individual, but they also are positive for society as well.
So is not, in terms of when you use the term social marketing, there are a lot of misconceptions out there and confusion. Social marketing is not about social advertising, although we use social advertising within the suite of techniques to influence human behavior. It's not just about social media or promotion, but again, we do use social media and promotion as a means of communication and influencing human behavior. we're not just about education and telling people what behavior they should be doing, but we're also about interpreting human behavior and looking at this, the techniques that we can use to encourage people to change their behavior. We're not driven by expert agendas, and we're not a one approach all model, which basically means that we use a suite of approaches, and together they have an impact on the social change agenda.
From social marketing then, that we're going beyond advertising, promotion, beyond brochures, beyond Facebook. That's kind of the icing on the cake, that's the visual aspect. Just like Coca-Cola or Nike, Nestle, any of these multinational companies, we look to understand people and where they are in their daily lives, and understand what's going on, as well as what we would like to change, which is that we work with people understanding their daily lives and understanding the family and the different patterns of behavior. It means too that we have to look what we call upstream meaning looking to policymakers, regulators and governance, because very often you find people may want to change their behavior, but the system is blocking them. So you look to the system or the infrastructure, perhaps the health infrastructure, the educational infrastructure, and changes are made there that the behavior then at the individual level or downstream at person's level can be freed up. That means that you have a greater chance of success of achieving the behavioral change and social change that you're interested in.
So applications of social marketing that range from the areas of public health to environment. And if you'd like to find some more information on the applications of social marketing, there are social marketing textbooks out there. Christine Domegan and Stuart Hastings have a lot of examples, and they discuss them. But for example, obesity. From an obesity perspective, there was Get Your Life into Gear, which was an intervention that was targeted at male truck drivers, but also used social marketing techniques to look at other addictive behaviours such as gambling, smoking and tobacco, and more recently in the area of environmental.
Okay, give you a very quick kind of overview of social marketing, what it is and what it isn't, and its relevance to trials. Give a hint to that. We want to turn our attention to the actual principles that were used in the SIMPLE study.
Okay, background behind SIMPLE. SIMPLE was a randomized controlled trial that incorporated social marketing techniques. It was the largest non-pharmaceutical trial in Ireland over the last number of years. In SIMPLE, we looked at improving the quality of antibiotic prescribing for suspected UTI patients. We recruited 30 general practices through IPCRN, which is the Irish Primary Care Research Network, and this was a research network that enabled us to electronically extract patient data so we could evaluate our patient outcomes. Our participants were all consultations of patients presenting in general practice with suspected urinary tract infections. So we didn't define what we thought were a urinary tract infections, but we allowed the GPs to design or to use their interpretation of it, and we asked them to code their patients U71 so we were able to identify UTI patients. And what we were interested in was examining we could improve the quality of antibiotic prescribing for UTIs. We had two study arms. Arm A looked at improving the quality of antibiotic prescribing on its own, and Arm B had the same elements as Arm A, but we also looked prescribing as well, compared to a control arm.
And if you want to read a little bit more about it, it's just been recently published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal 2015. So, to and its successes, what was at work behind the scenes? Well, the first principle would be considered the prime directive of social marketing is what called the client principle. Clients, customer, citizen, don't get caught up in the terminology. Use whatever suits you. But what we're saying here is that you are looking to the people that you want to recruit, your target audience, and go beyond just talking to them or consulting with them after the plan has been designed, and engage them from the beginning of the design stage in collaborating with you. So it means that your clients have a voice, that very strong voice at the beginning of the design process, and you hear that voice and listen to that voice throughout the design and the delivery of the trial. So we go beyond just asking people and into participation by consultation. Then that you are in a partnership, that there's a relationship being formed with the clients, and that you are teasing your way through some of the methodological issues and the delivery issues with them, as opposed to the trial being designed and then looking to recruit them after the event. And for that reason, you get into quite a deep understanding where your clients are at this particular point in time. So you identify their needs and wants, their values and priorities, and doing that so that you can work out how to bring about engagement with the trial and staying with the trial as well. Why is the next question? Because listening to your clients, understanding where they're coming from, allows you to bring them on the journey with you. And it means that they are more likely to engage in the recruitment and retention process. So it means that while there's investment up front, informative research, you're more likely to have a more successful retention and recruitment strategy towards the end. At work, an example here, just based on demographic information, no psychographic details or anything come in. If I said to you, can you think of a man born in 1948, a British second marriage, coming from an extremely well-known family, who comes to mind? First, most likely, most people will have guessed Prince Charles, but perhaps you thought about. The point being, demographics can give you a good starting point, but of themselves, they're not enough. Many trials fail to move beyond the simple demographic data that's there, and for that reason, run into difficulties, particularly when it comes to the recruitment retention phase.
So we did a lot of client principle at work kind of work before we started. We conducted extensive formative research with potential participants of the trial, as well as the GPs that we felt that could be participants in the trial. So we conducted focus groups with our patients, or potential UTI patients, and we conducted depth interviews with our GPs. To find out within our formative research was the reasons why GPs prescribed antibiotics, the influencers that were at play when prescribing antibiotics, specifically when they were treating urinary tract infections, and if UTIs were different from any other type of illness or any type of infection that would focus on the GPs. From the patient's perspective, we really wanted to look at, or from the potential patient's perspective, really wanted to look at or find out the reasons why the patients went to the GP. What were triggers for a decision to go to the GP? For example, their pain threshold, the types of symptoms they experienced, their previous experiences and how that influenced them wanted to go to the GP, and what did they expect from going to the GP. And again, we wanted to also examine the reasons why they had these expectations. Was it from previous experiences with GPs, or was it from discussing it with other peer-to-peer relationships? It gives an example of some of the issues that we need to think about, particularly within the Irish health system, where patients usually pay for their patient care. In terms of recruitment to the simple trial, using the formative research and this participant focus, we invited 32 GP practices to participate within the simple trial. And what was astounding with the recruitment for this trial was that within 2 weeks we had recruited our 30 practices, and only 2 out of the 32 that we recruited had declined, and for various reasons, such as have previously conducted research in this area. Another key point that I'd like to draw your attention to is that during the trial there was no loss to follow-up. And again, this was down to us doing extensive formative research within the clients that we were focused on, both the GP and the patients, and trying to identify what was of value to them in order to encourage them to participate in the trial.
Behind understanding the client goes very much then to the client and the other choices that they have. There may be other trials going on. There's certainly going to be other issues going on in their life. So you, again, in terms of designing your trial and delivering it, have to understand the alternatives that are available then to the participants or to the target group. So competition comes from 2 forms. First is your passive form, which is internally, much easier to sit on the couch in the evening time after a day at work than get up and go for a run. But also there's active competition, which could be coming from outside of the trial, from perhaps other trials, or from aspects of life, for example, coming up to a busy time like Christmas, and there's a lot of other work and activities to be engaged in, and that can jeopardize a trial as well. And because if you don't understand the alternatives and the choices that are there, they then can either block the behavior that you're interested in or detract from the behavior. If you understand what other choices are there, you can frame those choices as being less attractive and can factor it into your formative research to try and avoid them detracting from recruitment and retention. For someone who's doing a trial, we tend with expert eyes to say, like, here's our mission and our message, we're passionate about it, we're great advocates and champions. But when you look at our trial participants, they have their everyday life going on, and really the competitive principle is giving you your reality check.
In terms of what we found out within the simple study, for example, from our formative research, we knew that the knowledge of antibiotic resistance for the GP was quite high. They knew what it was and what it contributes to, but the GPs focused on the long-term consequences of antibiotic resistance instead of maybe the shorter-term consequences when they were talking about a UTI consultation. They knew that overprescribing contributes to antibiotic resistance, but they also knew that other sectors had a role to play within the issue of antibiotic resistance. And so the potential participants or the community members that participated in the focus groups knew what antibiotic was when they were asked when indirectly, but they found it very difficult to define or explain. They discussed becoming immune to antibiotics, which would not be technically correct if you were a microbiologist, but this was the type of language that they used to communicate what they thought antibiotic resistance were. And we knew that women would be more knowledgeable about the issue than men. So we conducted focus groups with both women and men, and the women were more knowledgeable about what antibiotic resistance were and the impact of antibiotic resistance. Interpreting these competitive principles or this knowledge into developing an intervention, we knew that our key messages in terms of antibiotic resistance needed very simplistic messages and information on the issue, and they don't want to be distracted by with scientific jargon. And also from the GP point of view, we also need to reinforce the short-term consequences of antibiotic resistance for patients. Part of research identified the consultation as key to a successful intervention in this area. We knew that from the research, we found that medical card status influenced when the patient decided to consult the GP. The medical card patients tended to consult earlier. The past experience helped develop their expectations, and the satisfaction from the consultation wasn't necessarily associated with the prescription of antibiotic. Only it also was linked to the length or duration of the consultation, and also the closeness of relationship and the type of and how the GP communicated with the patient. In terms of the GP's perspective on the UTI consultation, it was quick, easy, and uncomplicated. It was unpredictable in nature. The GP didn't know what the patient was going to say to them, but they knew that they wanted the patient to be satisfied with the outcome. So again, interpreting this type of information, we knew that an intervention that we designed, the intervention needed to be integrated into routine care. They needed to focus on interaction within consultation and this communication between GPs and patient, and to facilitate a conversation. Time was a major issue for both GPs and patients, and this needed to be integrated into their routine. Any intervention needed to be integrated into routine care, but could not elongate the consultation at the same time. And going back to some of the issues that Christine had highlighted in terms of the competitive nature of finding complex interventions, you can see from this example that there was much competition here in terms of whether you pay €50 to go and see the GP or try and put food on the table.
Choices. The choice can come from the individual, but they can also come from the community or the system that we're living in. So our third principle is the collective principle, and that's saying, look, recognize that no man or woman are an island to themselves. Our behaviours are influenced by those who are around us, and things that, the invisible hand of society kicking in. So it says to us that you don't just have to understand your participant or client, you have to understand the family, the community, the society that they're living in, because very often the infrastructure, whether it is, like we said, the health system or educational system or the media system, all of those can influence how we perceive a trial, how we react to the trial, whether we engage in it or not. Brings us to what we call kind of systems thinking and understanding a trial from a systems perspective.
So I wanted to go into every element of the Simple study, but I just wanted to draw your attention to two key elements that we developed as part of the Simple study. The first was audit and feedback reports that were developed by practice-specific data. So we asked GPs to code each patient as U71, and every month they received, the practice received a report that outlined what type of prescribing they were using, and the level of antibiotic resistance to the antibiotics of their choice. And what was interesting was about our reports was that we also compared the practice-specific data with the other practices that were participating in the trial, and we find that was quite effective in benchmarking where a GP or a practice were in terms of their prescribing behaviours. And from a patient's perspective, we also developed an interactive game that was shown in the waiting room called Bug Run. Bug Run was targeted at kids, and it just highlighted some of the issues around antibiotic resistance and illness. Along with that, we also developed an infographic, an infomercial, which encouraged the adult patient to have a conversation with GPs around some of the core issues of the course related to antibiotic resistance. Again, both these articles or both these components were developed using the formative research. And then here you're looking at another competitive principle. So although we were encouraging GPs to discuss the issue of antibiotic resistance with their patient, they felt that they might always have an opportunity to do so. We also developed a video which demonstrated that a GP could have this conversation within the space of time within the consultation.
Your fourth and final principle is what we call the creative principle. You've just at work already. Sinead has talked extensively about the formative research, and the creative principle embraces is information orientation, but it also uses the information orientation to look forward and to get into the design elements and the delivery elements of the intervention. I'm saying to have a look at being creative, innovative, so that the exchange is made attractive and motivating, and we'll use emotion as well as the rational argument. We do this because we want not just to inform participants or clients, but we want to engage with them and build on a relationship and build trust with them before, during, and after the trial. Here's an example taken from a European that we're doing at the moment on sea change. We're using a bit of humour to grab people's attention.
From the Simple Project's perspective, we wanted to make sure that the GPs remembered the Simple Project at every point within the consultation. So again, we created this audit and feedback report, which was for in terms of their short-term prescribing, but also relevant for them in terms of their professional requirements. So we made sure that from a creative point of view that they had a document that was very short and simple for them to understand, but was very useful and impactful at the same time. And we also used some quirky measures in order to remind the GPs constantly about the importance of U71. So for example, for our introductory workshop, we brought all our all GPs and all the practices cupcakes with U71 on them, and we went as far as sending our GPs a Christmas card in order to remind them that that we were still that they were still participating in Simple and to continue coding U71.
The takeaway messages then from this very short presentation on social marketing and its use in Simple. The 4 key principles. First, content orientation, to really know your target group, your target audience, your participants.
Orientation leads you to pay attention to other choices, alternatives.
Which is your collective principle. Collective orientation says, remember, we can't separate ourselves from our environment when we're running trials.
Creative orientation tells us to seek imaginative and innovative solutions to the problems that we are addressing.
Bring these 4 principles together, you find that they're mutually reinforcing, and over the discovery, design, and delivery phases of clinical trials, that there's an ongoing process. To find out more information as identified by Christine,
the main trial paper was published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal last month, and Mark have conducted a systematic review of social marketing effectiveness, which looks at the application of social marketing within clinical trials.
Ladies and gentlemen, is Whirlwind's view of social marketing trials and how you can look to increasing your success.
That's great. Thanks so much, Christine and Sinead. That was such an informative overview of social marketing for key trials. And I suppose for everyone that's listening, I was very fortunate to work on the Simple study with Sinead and Christine, and I can only speak very highly of the benefits of incorporating a social marketing strategy into your clinical trial design. As highlighted there, the Simple study, recruited its 30 practices within 2 weeks. We had no active follow-up. It certainly, the running of the trial seemed to have gone much smoother because of the insight and the information that Christine and Sinead were able to kind of give us on a day-to-day basis. For those that are listening in, we have time for some Q&A, for some questions. You should be able to type in some questions on the right-hand side of your screen via either the chat or the Q&A facility. So I'll just give you all a moment to have a think. If you have any questions you want to type in, I can direct them to both Sinead and Christine whenever you want to do that. From my own point of view, I remember, Sinead, just practical tips, as you mentioned, about like the cupcakes and binders to GPs in the study, the Simple study. I remember one of the items was, after the Christmas period, Christmas in the corner, but when we were in the trial, one of the suggestions that you would have made was, after the Christmas period, to re-engage with the GPs again and have another visit and call out to them. Something that I wouldn't have thought of, but given what your expertise, you were able to say, no, go and have another outreach, another visit to the GPs and re-engage them. And we definitely found that positively impacted on the trial, and as well engaging with for example, the other stakeholders in the receptionist. I remember being surprised at that suggestion, but I think it worked really well in engaging with the GPs themselves. I suppose for people that want to assess how effective their trial is from a process point of view, and Sinead, you would have done a process evaluation with Simple. Can you provide any kind of maybe tips or advice around people that are considering a process evaluation? Is that the way you would kind of recommend people to go for assessing the practical elements of how a trial works?
Certainly, Sandra. One of the, I suppose, biggest mistakes people make with the process evaluation is that they leave it to the end. And
Yeah.
I think that because you're evaluating the processes, that's something that you can think about the management of or the development of once you have, I suppose, the impact of your trial.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would recommend that you build in process evaluations from the very start and take note of the different processes that are involved in managing the trial. So, for example, we took account of how many conversations that Sandra was the person that was in contact with the practices. So we took account of how many times that you contacted them, the practices that were engaging, the practices weren't, and what we could do to make them more engaging in the future.
Yeah, I remember. It was your advice was to keep a note of every single interaction, and I know it sounds like the best thing to do, and it was the best thing to do. But dealing with 30 practices and having correspondence on a daily and a weekly basis, it was like a lot of work. But I could see the finished product as to why you were suggesting that, because it did allow us to look back and track engagement from the different practices and even from the GPs within the practice. And kind of as the trial progressed, we really had a sense of who was engaging and maybe why they weren't engaging. That was really practical and really good recommendation.
If you're ever working on a bigger trial and you had the same kind of issues where you wanted to conduct your process evaluation, you don't need to include every element within your process evaluation, but maybe look at the key success factors or but certainly account of the elements that ran smoothly and the elements that didn't. And what we did was we took account of everything during the trial, and we also followed up with in-depth interviews with patients and GPs afterwards to understand, I suppose, why some of them were more engaged than others. And again, it just goes back to your motivations and your the participant, I suppose, engagement with it from the very start.
Exactly.
One thing, Sandra, that we're finding in some of the other studies, when you're doing either a study or a trial, you're obviously very focused on it and what your primary and secondary outcomes are. But behind that, you may be doing it so you can scale out or scale up the trial or the intervention. So the process evaluation becomes very important when you take that longer term, more sustainable view of the work as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I don't think we have any questions from our participants as yet. What we do is direct them to yourselves, if that's okay, Sinead and Christine, that you can be contacted should you have any pressing issues or any questions on the presentation here this afternoon. That's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
We send out just email addresses to those that have registered, and as I mentioned, this will be available on the website as well to view at a later date should anyone wish to do so. But on that note, Christine and Sinead, sincere thanks for giving your time today to deliver this webinar. I think it's going to be a real benefit and a very beneficial resource for the WTMRN to have on our website. So thanks, and I'll see you.
yourself, Sandra, and to all the participants as well.
Thank you. Bye.